Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello. This is Deborah Johnson with you today for a Women at Halftime podcast. Always a pleasure to be back. And this is a subject I've wanted to approach for a little while. I've done a little extra research on the value of common sense. And before I get into it, make sure that you're getting our newsletter, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. You can also connect with me on other websites of mine, Deborah Johnson Speaker or DJ Works Music. But with our newsletter, you get some discounts that I give often, new products, music, as well as other products. And also our new book, Stop Circling. And I have others on Amazon as well. I have an author page on Amazon, so you can find our other books. But to make sure that you get this, because there's a lot of common sense in this book. It's simple, short chapters, easy to read, very applicable for roundabouts in your life. So I hope you take advantage of that as we get into this subject today. So thanks again for joining me. And I really look forward to sharing more of this now, this wonderful topic, the value of common sense. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines common sense as sound and prudent judgment based on a simple perception of a situation or on some facts. So part of the issue with applying that definition of common sense is determining how a situation is perceived. In the past several years, the distortion of facts and distrust of what's claimed to be real and true and science has pushed many toward pessimism and disillusionment. So that's really why I wanted to cover this subject today, because Thomas Paine in 1736 to 1809, that's when he lived, he was an English-born American founding father, and he wrote his most famous pamphlet called Common Sense in 1776. And it's in clear and simple language, and it made its arguments accessible to the average person, and it became a sensation. Back at that time, it sold over 500,000 copies in a few months. It's amazing for an author to sell that many copies, especially back then. Its main premise was that the American colonies should declare independence from Great Britain. Well, today, almost 250 years later, we can affirm the value of a simple and honest approach that not only included common sense, but influenced the independence of our country. And I thought it important to first cover why common sense is important, then how we can apply it to our lives and businesses. And again, I've done a little extra research on this. It was interesting to me, so I hope it is to you as well. So why is common sense important? Well, the value of common sense has become more relevant as more and more people I talk to, they've turned off the news, and they've even started to ignore social media. Well, what is truthful and sensible anymore? And what is just craziness? When those two dichotomies become hard to distinguish, I feel it's time to back up and take a look at where we are. Whether liberal, conservative, for, against the running political dialogue of the day, common sense is timeless in its effect. I read the 1932 book, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley in high school, and it was required reading in my English class. And the message just seemed outlandish at the time. But the message today, with a society that places conformity and efficiency above individuality and personal experience, it's infiltrated our lives. How did he know that? Or how could he imagine that? Another book I read was 1984, published in 1949 by George Orwell, which is a powerful warning about the dangers of totalitarianism and how did I say that? Totalitarianism. Oh, you got it. And the importance of preserving individual freedom and autonomy. And again, it seems so far-fetched at the time. But now, wow, now I see both of those books more relevant today than any time in history. How could they write like that? How could they see that future? Well, I felt like it. So it was important for me. Now I felt like it was important to focus on the basic elements of common sense and then share it with you as my listeners. So I've come up with 4 little elements here. I'm sure there are more, but they apply both personally and professionally to add common sense to our lives. And number 1, be practical and perceptive. King Solomon, the third and last king in the ancient United Kingdom of Israel, he reigned for 40 years from about 970 to 931 BC. He desired and pursued wisdom, most of all. He was asked what he wanted. That's what he wanted, wisdom. And his good judgment not only helped him to be a good ruler, but it did bring him and his nation wealth. As an example, when 2 mothers living in the same house came to Solomon with their infant sons, this is in 1 Kings 3, 16 to 28 in the biblical account, one of the sons had been accidentally smothered and died. So when both mothers claimed that the living child was theirs, Solomon perceived the true mother would allow no harm to come to that child. So he declared the baby would be just cut in 2, and each woman would receive half. Well, this statement caused one of the women to relent. She would give the child to the other woman. But Solomon knew the true mother would not allow the child to be killed, so the child was given to that woman. It was practical, perceptive, and very wise. He had identified the problem clearly, but also perceived the heart of the lying woman. Now you can see all the references to this in the article I write with most every podcast that I put out. So make sure that you click into that because you'll be able to see that reference and read that. So let's move on for the second principle. Be simple. I recently walked into the Lego store in Anaheim's downtown Disney, where the entrance is flanked by these huge Lego models of a dragon and a Disney character. They're huge, almost up to the roof. I was pleasantly surprised to see the variety and the scope of the products from Lego. They went from like a small little floral arrangement to the large Millennium Falcon. And I knew the company had faced declining sales and intense competition from electronic toys in the early 2000s. So I was really fairly impressed. I only searched for a couple things online. I had no idea they had that many products. Well, at that time, back in those early 2000s, Lego, they refocused on its core products and values, and then they introduced new products like the Mindstorms robotics kit. Now, the Mindstorms kit, it includes electronic components, which include sensors, motors, and even a programmable, like a brick, to control the robot's behavior. However, still at its base are the Lego building blocks, which are simple. Now, in my book, Stop Circling, I included an appendix chapter on core values, and I state how those values will provide the stability in resetting one's course. It's a simple and direct principle, but yet one that's often forgotten. Renaming a product or a movement does little to change the actual outcome. The result will often be the same if the core value is not followed. The simple, straightforward solution in defining the core mission or value is often what will bring most favorable results. So let's move on. Number 3, distinguish truth from the absurd. Okay, so this is going to be a hard one. One of the aspects of comedy is the intense exaggeration of some sort of characteristic, such as emotions or personality traits. And comedy also includes observational humor, which highlights the absurdity or the humor in mundane situations. And in the past couple of years, especially, the lines have been blurred with absurd situations that hardly seem real at the forefront of our news feed. I thought this was interesting. The Babylon Bee is the largest American right-wing satire website that thrives off of parodying the news of the day. They have tens of thousands of paid subscribers and over 1 million YouTube subscribers, and they get over 25 million page views each month. Seth Dillon, the CEO, he said that today they are struggling to come up with joke headlines. And he quotes, "We found that the world is very difficult to satirize right now because it's so insane." Well, there's another satire newsletter called The Onion. Many of you have heard of this. It's been around for a long time. They were founded in 1988. And it's a satirical publication that parodies real stories and events. And I would suspect that they're facing the same issue. And they are a little bit more on the left. It doesn't matter what side you're on. Mark Twain quotes, "If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. That is, you don't have to remember who you told the last lie to." And sometimes when we see things just out in the news constantly and it's mixed up, we're confused. So 4, common sense. Be brief and clear. Thomas Paine's Common Sense that I mentioned at the beginning of this, it's a 47-page pamphlet. That's it. And this is the size of some people's bios. And Thomas Jefferson said, "The most valuable of all talents is that of never using 2 words when one will do." And I remember one of our sons, when first starting to work as an attorney, his boss told him to cut 10 words down to 5. And then, if possible, cut even more. Well, I found it's much harder to be brief than wordy in my writings. When working on the book rewrites of my musicals, Stilts and Tsarina especially, I found it very difficult to cut scenes or dialogues as I liked what I wrote. And even harder were cutting some of those songs that didn't move the story forward enough. I loved the songs, loved the music. But I learned how important it was for the performance and for the clarity of the story and understanding. To say something succinctly and clearly will have more impact than drawing a point out so far that when completed, you can't remember the main point of the dialogue. And sometimes we hear all of this going out, we don't even understand what's being told. So in summary, these are not the only elements of common sense, but these create a launching point to distinguish what is logical and what's the best path forward. And many have followed paths that may not have made sense at first, but then usually there's been behind that much thought and calculation in determining the outcomes and the results. So really in this, I want to encourage all of us to not be afraid to take an honest look. Or we might continue down that path to a greater insanity with very little satire even needed. So look at the truth, look at the honesty, look at the situation. Be like a Solomon to see that sort of wisdom as we look at these situations. And maybe we need to review, all of us need to review what was in Brave New World in 1984, those books, and to see, is this what we're following? So many that have turned off the news, I don't blame you. And I do some of the same. I really watch what I read and what I pay attention to, because I don't want to make that insanity take over my mind. I want to think for myself, and I want to encourage you to think for yourself with that common sense, with a bit of logic. You can still take plenty of risks, but common sense and not just following after the crowd. I have a lot of articles and some podcasts also on groupthink and on being able to be innovative and creative. So, you can always look those up. I have a lot of sources in there as well. But I felt like that common sense, because that title from Thomas Paine just stood out to me so strong that it was way back at the beginnings of our independence and our country in the United States. And it's still so relevant today for our personal independence, especially if you are an entrepreneur, small business owner, a solopreneur. But if you run any size of business, that sort of independence and that freedom. And if we don't fight for those freedoms with our common sense of what really makes sense in this world, we stand to lose it. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about my messaging at this point in my life, for those at mid-career, at the halftime of life, because you have so many skills, so much to give. You have a lot more freedom usually at this point in your life. You have the resources, you have the experience, and not to let everything else just take over, and to do what we can to encourage others to use their gifts as well, because we need a little more common sense in this world. Thank you for joining me. Again, this is Deborah Johnson. Connect with me on my newsletter, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Deborah Johnson speaker, DJ Works Music. And I look forward to being with you again next time. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.